We start in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa allazina amanu wa 'amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, by the token of time through the ages, verily man is doomed, mankind is doomed, except such as have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual propagation of truth and of patience and constancy. Sadaqallahu Mawlana Azim. Dear panelists, this is our third and last day of roundtable with Dr. Israr Ahmed. For the last 2 days, he has talked about the conceptual and more ideational ideas about Islam. And today he will talk about historical facts and realities on ground, with special reference to the subcontinent, Indo-Pakistan subcontinent. So the topic this morning is Islamic intellectual history in modern South Asia, with special reference to Pakistan, critical issues and perspectives. I request Dr. Israr Ahmed to make his discourse, please.
Ahmaduhu wa usalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'du fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qala an-nabiyyu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Inna Allah yab'asu fi hadhihi al-ummati ala ra'si kulli mi'ati 'amin man yujaddidu laha dinaha, aw kama qala. Dear brothers and sisters from Adam and Eve, may Allah's grace and mercy be upon both of them, and may Allah bless all of us. Today's subject is, I think, too wide to be covered in 1 hour, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. Firstly, we shall have to fix what we mean by modern age, Islamic intellectual history in modern South Asia. Where from to start it? Arbitrarily, I'm fixing it from the time the Britishers occupied India. But before we discuss what were the influences after British occupation and what were the reactions among the Muslims of India, let me give you a preview, very brief, of Islam in the subcontinent. Islam entered the subcontinent first in the beginning of the 8th century of Christian era, or near the end of the 1st century of Hijri era, in 713 CE, when Muhammad bin Qasim invaded Sindh in reaction to a looting of an Arabic caravan by the people of Sindh and arresting and abducting a number of Muslim women. There was a demand from the Muslims to return the women and to make good the damages. But the Hindu Raja refused, Dahir. So there was an invasion. So this was an Islam not of the prophetic days, not of the pious caliphate, because the pious caliphate, the rightly guided caliphate, had ended half a century before this event. So the purest form of Islam didn't even touch the Indian subcontinent. But nevertheless, this Islam which came with the Arabs was purely Arab Islam. No external influences had yet entered the Islamic fold. This was pure Arabian Islam and simple. There were no sects, no schools of fiqh, jurisprudence, no schools of scholasticism, etc., etc. Simple. Quran and Sunnah, Quran and Sunnah. But this advent of Islam in South Asia was very brief, because the third era, which was prophesied by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had started. I narrated to you a hadith from the Prophet that this is my time. Takunu nabuwatu fikum ma sha Allahu an takun. Prophethood will remain with you so long as Allah wants it to remain. Summa yarfa'u Allahu idha sha'a yarfa. Then Allah will lift it up when He deems fit. That is, I will remain with you as long as Allah wishes. Then there will be a period of caliphate in the footsteps of prophethood. Khilafah ala minhaj an-nubuwah. Exactly the same system will continue during this second period. But it will also remain so long as Allah will like it to remain. Then it will also be lifted. Then the third phase would be of cruel kingship. Summa takunu mulkan a'adham, biting kingship. So this third stage had already started when Islam entered the subcontinent. And that is why, because Muhammad bin Qasim was very, very, very successful here, and due to his piety, the Hindus here made idols for him and started worshipping him. Seeing that a person is becoming so popular with the masses, and it could be a threat to the king sitting over there in Damascus. So he was recalled and killed. And with that, there was the coming back of this era very soon. So this stage was very short-lived. Now Islam entered this subcontinent from the northwest through Afghanistan 300 years after this invasion of Sindh. During these 300 years, 3 centuries, many external influences had entered Islam. The Greek logic, the Greek philosophy, Neoplatonic mysticism. So to say, it was Arabian, Iranian and Turkish Islam which came to the subcontinent. A mixture of 3. Originally Arab, then the Iranian, Persian, and then the Turkish. What was the main features of this Islam? Number 1, Quran had receded in the background, faded background. Why? Number 1, because when Islam entered from the stage of struggle and jihad, a revolutionary struggle, into a state, now a state was established. So now law became more important than the inspiration from Quran. This is the natural change. Number 2, when there was monarchy, there was, people were loving wealth, gathering, accumulating wealth, absentee landlordism. So the people at the helm of affairs didn't want that people should read Quran. They will see the real picture of Islam. And in that mirror, if they will look upon us, there will be a negative influence. So consciously, Quran was taken back on the back burner. Instead, hadith and fiqh, the jurisprudence, they were the focus of attention. 4 schools, big schools of fiqh, rather 5 we can say, had been established till that time. But the school of fiqh that came into Indian subcontinent was Hanafi, the one started by Imam Abu Hanifa. Then there had been invented Ilmul Kalam, scholasticism. The Mu'tazili, the Ash'ari, Al-Maturidi, and a mixture of this also was imported into the subcontinent. Then there was a mysticism, and it had Neoplatonic influences in it, external. So there was also an integral part of this Islam which entered subcontinent round about the 10th century of Christian era. And this was the condition from that time till the 18th century. There were Muslim rulers, there were muftis, legal people who can give legal opinion, fatwas. There were qazis, magistrates, deciding the disputes and affairs according to the Sharia. And there were the khatibs in the mosque to deliver the khutbah of Jummah, Friday. And they were also paid by the government, not independent. These 3 positions were government positions, bureaucratic positions. Khatib in the mosque, Jammu mosque. There used to be an ordinary mosque for 5 prayers a day. No khutbah, no lecture whatsoever. No sermon. The sermon was restricted to Friday. And that was delivered by the people appointed by the government. Just as we have today in Turkey and we have today in Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. So there were kings, there were these ulama, and everyone had with his name Hanafi and either Qadri or Naqshbandi. These were the schools of the mysticism. Now this was the condition when the British entered India from Bengal, eastern end. After the coming and conquest of India by the Britishers, the division between state and religion, which had already taken place, the political power was with those who had might. Might was right. A tribe is stronger, he will take. Babur was stronger, he defeated Ibrahim Lodi and he became the emperor here. It has nothing to do with religion whatsoever. The religion was with the khatibs, with the qazis, with the muftis. But now this division became more apparent because the Britishers were ruling. And if I use my own terminology, now the deen was of the Britishers and Islam was reduced absolutely to the position of a mazhab religion. You can have your own beliefs, okay, we don't object. You can have your modes of worship, 5 prayers, keeping fast in the month of Ramadan, go ahead. Even personal law, yes, you can practice your own personal law. But the criminal code, civil code, taxation, all these things would be ours. Along with the Britishers came 2 things. Christianity, the first center of the propagation of Christianity was in Bengal. Bible was translated into Urdu. And it was spread like anything. Government was doing it. And number two, a civilization, the Western civilization came. Number three, English language and physical sciences and Western thought. These things came in India. Now to this situation there were two reactions from among the Muslim intellectuals of India. I have discussed this thing in detail in one of my pamphlets, Islamic Renaissance, the real task ahead. So I would request you to go through that pamphlet. There were two reactions, as I said.
Tell the name again, Islamic
Renaissance or Renaissance. The real task ahead. The first reaction was purely defensive, based on the pragmatic view that we are not in a position to attack on these new influences that are coming. Western thought, Western civilization, and especially the physical sciences. Hence we should go and sit in the corners and keep with us the Quran and the Sunnah and the fiqh, trying to keep them alive for the next generations to come, lest they wash off permanently. This was the reaction of some ulama, and especially on this basis, seminary of Deoband that was established. And that was actually a defensive mechanism. We won't learn English, we won't read science, we won't take up the Western civilization, we won't use the spoons and forks which are coming with them, we won't dine on a table. All these things we will just boycott. Number two, the ulama, some of them, they came into politics also. Firstly, it was a politics for getting freedom from the Britishers, freedom movements. And it was a great freedom movement led by Congress along with Jamiatul Ulama Hind, an organization of the Muslim learned people of India. And this potential school of thought then later on take the form of a movement in the shape of Tablighi Jama'ah. I hope you people are aware, because Tablighis going to Europe, going to America, a very big congregation in very close to Lahore, more than 1 million people, they gather here, more than 3 million people, just equal to the people who perform Hajj every year. They gather in Dhaka, Tongi. It's a big movement. So this concept of Islam as a mazhab has taken the form of a movement, spreading the Islamic beliefs and focusing on personal piety and performing all the rituals and the ceremonies of Islam, the modes of worship, having an appearance of a Muslim regarding clothing and regarding their faces, beards and their hair. So this is the movement, Tablighi Jamaat, which represent the same concept of mazhab. But it is dynamic, very dynamic. The second reaction was more logical, so to say. That no, we can't boycott what is coming, whatever is new. We have to confront it. Whatever is correct and right and true, we must accept. Whatever is wrong, we shall reject. So this was the attitude taken by a very dynamic person, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, who established first a school, then a college, then a university, the Aligarh University. We shall teach English and Arabic. We shall teach sciences, modern social sciences also. And we'll teach Islamiyat also. So this was the way taken by the majority of the Muslims of India. But this second reaction, in the very beginning, was wrongly directed, although it was essentially correct. Why the people who took to this path? They were overawed by the Western civilization, Western thinking, and especially this physics, the science, although that was science of Newtonian era. Physics was in its infancy up till that time. But they were overawed and felt defeated. So they looked to Islam, and whatever didn't appear to them to fit in this new, they just chopped it off. For example, Sir Syed Ahmad said, there is no existence of angels. What Quran calls angels are the natural forces of the universe, that's all. No personified existence of angels. There are no jinns, only people who get easily flared up. They are called that they are made of fire. They are the uncivilized people. They are jinns. They tried to have an explanation, physical explanation, scientific explanation of the miracles. About the breaking of the sea at the time of Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam. They said it was tide and ebb. When the ocean was on the ebb, Moses and the children of Israel, they crossed over. And so on and so forth. So to say, scientific explanations, so that it can fit in the modern mind, to make it fit to the modern mind. Now the people who took to this path, most of the people, because if they read English, they could get the services in the government, they could be employed. Otherwise not. If they have to learn engineering and medicine, etc., they have to go through that education system. So most of the Western educated elite of the Muslims of South Asia belong to this category. The beginner was Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, but then so many people carried this flag. Allama Mashriqi, then the Qadianis, the physical explanations, scientific explanations, acceptable to the modern man. And then people who refused to give due importance to the tradition of the Prophet, people who refute hadith, we shall follow only Quran. And we shall interpret Quran as we like, according to our own understanding, without any reference to what the Prophet said. What the Prophet has been supposed to have said. We can never be sure. So these are the shades. But the source was Sir Sayyid Ahmad. But this process, Brother Roger will again appreciate, thesis and antithesis brought a synthesis. Synthesis in the person of Allama Iqbal. He clung to the fundamentals of Islam and Iman. And he studied, he read English, he studied philosophy, the old as well as modern. He went to England, Germany, got his PhD from Germany, Barat law from England. And you know, through his poetry, mostly, he represented true Islam. And not only true Islam, but also a critique, very severe, deep critique of the Western civilization. Now this movement, Sir Sayyid Khan and Iqbal, this now took the form of a Muslim nationalist movement, political movement in India. Muslims are a separate nation. They are not one nation with the Hindus. Our culture is different. Our lifestyles are different. Our beliefs are different. Everything is different. We are not one nation. Our nationhood is not based on land, on a country. The position of the Hindus was that we are all Indians. We are one nation. We should be united to get freedom from the Britishers, etc., etc. But this Muslim nationalist movement tried to get the safeguards from Congress that our rights will be fully preserved and protected. Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah remained a biggest banner holder, standard bearer of this Hindu-Muslim unity and amicability. But he was disappointed by Hindu mentality. And due to his very long, a very close association with the Hindu leadership of India, he came to the conclusion that we can't expect justice from them. And they are in a great majority. If this country gets freedom as one country, we will be doomed. There is enmity in the hearts of the Hindus because the Muslims had governed them. Somewhere for 1,000 years, somewhere for 800 years, somewhere for 600 years. There was a reaction. And not all the Muslim rulers were pious. Some of them were pious also, no doubt, but not all of them. When the Prophet said, cruel kingship, so kingship was there, all the evils of kingship were there. So this movement flourished. And then it took the shape of Pakistan movement. We must have a separate country in the subcontinent so that we can establish Islam. Our own religion, our own social order, our own political system, our own economic system, our own criminal law, our own civil law. We want that India be partitioned on the basis of this religion. Wherever Muslims are in majority in the northwest of India and the northeast of India, they should be a separate country and the rest of India should be separate. And because the slogan of religion was invoked, the slogan was, Pakistan ka matlab kya? La ilaha illallah. What Pakistan means? La ilaha illallah. There is no God except Allah. And we want to establish the deen of Allah. Iqbal said in his lecture of 1930, presidential address of the annual session of All India Muslim League, he said, it is destiny that an independent Muslim state will be established in the northwest of India. And if that happens, we shall have an opportunity, a chance, to remove the bad dots on the face of Islam, which appeared during the period of imperialism, kingship, whether the Umayyad or the Abbasid, to remove those and show to humanity at large the real face of Islam. This is Islam. We would establish Islam. And the same was said by Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. We need Pakistan to show to the world at large, humanity at large, a model of the Islamic principles of the same three words used by H.G. Wells: human equality, fraternity, and freedom. Islamic principles, Islamic interpretations of human fraternity, equality, and freedom. Now, leaving this issue here, I'm coming to another subject which was going on side by side. It's the other dimension. And for that I quoted the hadith in the beginning. The Prophet said, and we believe in it, that the chain of prophethood which started with Adam, alayhi salatu wassalam, he was also a prophet. The first man and the first prophet. And there is a chain of thousands of prophets. The recorded prophets are only, which we find in the Old Testament, and then the New Testament, Jesus and Muhammad. But there are prophets have been sent to all regions of the world. But Quran is giving the history of only those who appeared in that area, region. Because otherwise they should have been taught first geography and history and all the countries. No. But this chain of prophets and messengers of Allah has come to an end, and its climax, its zenith, in the prophethood and messengerhood of Muhammad. We accept Noah, we accept Abraham, along with so many others. But the five, according to us, the five most important messengers of Allah have been Noah, number 1, Abraham, number 2, Moses, number 3, Jesus, number 4, and fifth and final, Muhammad, alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, after this institution of prophethood and messengerhood coming to an end, Allah gave a promise through Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam that He will keep on raising from among Muslims mujaddids. Mujaddid means renewer, reviver. You may call reformers. They are not prophets. These, Allah has promised, the Prophet said, that in this ummah, He will raise mujaddids, renewers of Islam, Islamic faith and Islamic practices, and washing it off from the external influences which might have come through that century, 100 years, making it pure Islam regarding the faith and the practices in every century. Now, for the first 1,000 years of Islamic history, or Muslim history, I should say, all the mujaddids appeared in the Arab world. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, who revived caliphate for a short period and finished that monarchy of the Umayyads and the landlordship, etc., etc. Then Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, so on and so forth, Imam Ghazali, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, these are all mujaddids. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a great mujaddid. But the strange fact is that no sooner than the second 1,000 years started, from 11th century Hijrah, this institution of Mujaddideen was shifted to the South Asia. First of all, Ahmad Sarhandi, Mujaddid al-Fasani, the Mujaddid of the second 1,000 years, because it had started. What he did? He washed away the influences that came against Islam during the time of the great Mughal Emperor Akbar the Great. He said, and he was advised by some ulama, his court, belonging to his court, that Allah's one day is equal to our 1,000 years. This is twice appeared this thing in Quran. One day of Allah is according to your calendar, it is 1,000 years. So Islam of Muhammad was for 1,000 years only. Now that 1,000 years has come to an end, now a new religion is required. And I am giving you the new religion called Deen-e-Ilahi, only keeping the Prophet aside. He tried to join, take something from Hinduism, take something from Buddhism, take something from Islam, and mix it up and make it a new deen. It was actually politically motivated. He knew that the subcontinent is a very big power, very big force, but the hurdles in its coming up in the world is this division on the basis of religion. So there has to be amalgamated all these things together and a mixture provided. And actually, it was the rejection of the Sharia of Muhammad. And you know, the identity of the Ummah was based on the Sharia. So bypassing the prophethood, now Islam is gone. It loses its identity. Secondly, at the same time, I told you when Islam entered subcontinent, there was mysticism. It has both elements, Islamic mysticism, yes, but the Neoplatonic element. Here it got influence from the Hindu mysticism also. And now when these mysticisms, they came together, the result was sort of pantheism. Pantheism is just contrary to Islam. Islam is based on Tawheed, he is alone. This universe is his creation, not the part of his person, not at all. So under this pantheistic, although the Wahdatul Wujud, unity of being of Ibn Arabi is somewhat different, Wahdatul Shahood of Ahmad Sarhandi is somewhat different, but upon the masses, the influence was that of pantheism, pantheistic mysticism. And Islam was going to be lost. And I may bring to your attention that India is very famous in this, Hindus. They assimilated any religion, putting an end to that religion, assimilating it into their own religion. What to speak of any religion which had come from outside? Even Buddhism, which was born in India, it was finished. Now you go and see it in Thailand or somewhere, Far East, Southeast. In India there is no Buddhism. Although Buddha was born there, he preached there. In the same way, Hindu Mat wanted that Islam should also be absorbed and finish its identity as a separate religion. Now these two things, one coming politically from the emperor, Mughal the great Mughal, and the other coming from mysticism. All these influences were washed away by this Mujaddid of the 11th century of Hijrah, Sheikh Ahmad Sarhandi. And the identity of Muslim Ummah was preserved. And the maximum emphasis now came on following the Prophet. And Iqbal in his footsteps says, "Ba Mustafa ba rasan khish ra ke di hamaust. Agar baula rasidi tamam bula habist." Take yourself to the feet of Muhammad, because Islam is but Muhammad. Nothing but Muhammad. And if you not go to him, it's all falsehood, bula habist. The infidel uncle of Muhammad, Abu Lahab, who was the bitterest enemy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was re-established. Then came in the next century a great intellectual giant, that was Shah Waliullah of Delhi. He, one person, can be equated with the whole team in Europe who revived the knowledge. Or Renaissance. He is so big a personality. First of all, he revived all the Islamic sciences and knowledge from its ultimate sources. As I told you, Quran had receded into background because the court language during this Islamic rule in India was Persian, not Arabic. I told you this Islam was a mixture of Arabism and Iranianism and Turkishism. So Quran had receded. People didn't know what Quran is saying. They only recited it to get some sawab, we call it, some reward in the hereafter, because we are reciting and reading the word of Allah and the book of Allah. That's all. People didn't know what is written in it. They revered Quran, they respected it, they loved it, they honored it, recited it, but they didn't know. Even to the extent that among the ulama, it was a sin to translate Quran into any other language. It was this intellectual giant who started translation of Quran himself into Persian, because that was the court language, and then his three sons into Urdu. One only gave a translation. The second one gave a translation of his own with some explanatory notes. The third one wrote a full exegesis. We call it tafsir of Quran. So back to Quran, the original source of knowledge. This process back to Quran, ruju ila al-Quran, go back to Quran. This started in the 12th century after Hijrah by no less a person than Shah Waliullah Dehlvi. The real spirit of Quran and the emphasis is put on jihad. I told you, Quran says there can be no salvation without jihad. There can be no iman without jihad. When Quran was opened, now jihad came into the focus. So in the 13th century of Hijrah, now the Mujaddid was Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, the same Sayyid Ahmad Sarhandi, Ahmad Barelvi. Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, and his main lieutenant was the grandson of Shah Waliullah, Shah Ismail. They waged a campaign, struggle. The purpose was to oust the Britishers from India and return and make India again Darul Islam, because Muslims were ruling it. They snatched power from us. But strategically, he started his jihad, or qital, I should say here, from the northwest frontier area, because there the hinterland was Islamic, Afghanistan, go to Afghanistan, Iran, Turkish. And Punjab, was at that time occupied by Sikhs. And they were persecuting Muslims badly. He migrated to the northwest frontier province, but he committed a mistake. He, as soon as reached there, he established Islamic State, enforced Sharia in full. The local population resented. They had their own customs, Pukhtuns, their social customs. So there was a revolt from within. People betrayed him. So many people who came with him from as far as Bengal, Bihar, UP, these were the three most important provinces of India from which people joined hands with Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi. As a result, he failed. He was martyred in 1831 at Balakot. It's about 200 miles to the northwest of Lahore. But he revived the spirit of jihad. In the 14th century, we had Shaykhul Hind, Maulana Mahmud Hassan of Deoband. He again started a freedom movement, but he wanted help from Afghanistan and from Darul Khilafah, Turkey. If we get help from there and from inside India we stand up in revolt, we can make the Britishers run from here. That attempt also failed. But this process and this lineage of Mujaddids have left impression on the general mind of Muslims of the subcontinent. Maybe you call it the collective subconscious of the Muslims in India has the influences of Shaykh Ahmad Sarhandi, Shah Waliullah Dehlavi, Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi, and Shaykhul Hind. Now we come to the 20th century. In the 20th century, the subcontinent produced four very important intellectual leaders. First and foremost, Iqbal. He had the educational background, modern. A PhD in philosophy from Munich. Bar at law from London. A philosopher and a poet. Great philosopher and a great poet. Number one, he added to the mission of Shah Waliullah, which was started by Shah Waliullah, calling Muslims back to Quran, back to Quran, back to Quran. He said that the basic cause that we are being humiliated in this world today is that we have turned our backs to Quran. If you want to live as Muslims, it's impossible without Quran. So return to Quran. Then he initiated new Ilm-e-Kalam. The Ilm-e-Kalam of Ghazali and Ilm-e-Kalam of others, Razi, etc. was now obsolete. Why? Because that was the Ilm-ul-Kalam based on the Greek logic and philosophy, trying to fill the gap between Islamic aqaid and dogma and the Aristotelian logic and Greek philosophy. But now the philosophy had gone into the background. It was the era of science, physical sciences. Now the need of the hour was to bridge the gap between Quran and the physical sciences. This process was started by Allama Iqbal in his poetry as well as his lectures, 6 lectures. The collection of these 6 lectures, but there are 7 actually. The title is Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. Reconstruction, note this word. Reconstruction of religious thought in Islam. On the basis of modern psychology, modern epistemology, modern physics. But he was also, although he was an idealist, a thinker, a philosopher. The most accurate picture of his photo is this: sitting, contemplating, holding his head by the forehead. This is the exact representation of his personality. But he was alive to the facts on the ground also. What threat was coming by Hindu majority in the subcontinent, who are full of revenge. They want to take revenge from Muslims because they ruled over them for near a century. And this fear, was expressed by Indira Gandhi. Although she was the granddaughter of Motilal Nehru, a very civilized person, he said, when he was asked, what is your religion? What can I tell you? By language, I am a Muslim. By birth, I am a Hindu. By civilization, I am a Westerner, European. And now, father of Indira Gandhi, he was a socialist, very broad-minded, secular. But the granddaughter of Motilal and daughter of Jawaharlal, when Dhaka fell and Pakistan was torn apart into 2 pieces, she said, we have avenged our 1,000 years defeat. That is the Hindu psyche. We have avenged our 1,000 years defeat. So this condition Iqbal was seeing. And I have already quoted his presidential address to the All India Muslim League session of Allahabad in December 1930. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, till that time I told you, he was striving hard to have unity among Muslims and Hindus. Only that the Hindus should promise, give a solemn pledge that our rights will be preserved. But then he was disappointed. He left the political arena of India, went to London, settled there, started his legal practice. But in 1932, Iqbal went there for the second roundtable conference and met him. At that time, Iqbal injected into him the concept of Islamic revival. Actually, protection of Muslims was a negative attitude based on fear. But to revive Islam and to show to the world a model of Islamic State, that was the positive purpose. He injected it, and he persuaded him to come back to India and lead the Muslims. From that time onwards till his death, he was repeating this lesson given to him by Iqbal: Islam, Islam, Islam.